My name is Elias, 28 years old, and if we crossed paths, you'd likely describe me as the reserved one in any crowd. I've never been the boisterous sibling, never the one clamoring for the spotlight at family dinners or hijacking conversations to make them about me. That role was always claimed by my younger sister, Camille, 2 years my junior, impossibly vibrant, and perpetually the apple of my parents' eyes. Growing up, I mastered the art of staying silent. When Camille threw tantrums over getting the wrong colored cup at dinner, my mother would quietly swap mine without a word. When she neglected her assignments or flunked a test, my father would shrug, saying, "She's just got a free spirit." My straight-A report cards met with a nod and, "That's what we expect from you, Elias." It started small, these slights that made me feel like a side character in my own story. Over time, those moments stacked into a quiet resentment I buried deep, never letting it surface. That is, until recently. Camille got engaged last year to Ryan, a cookie-cutter finance guy who seems to think he coined the term weekend getaway. We weren't close. Once, at our cousin's wedding, he mistook me for a server. I brushed it off. Camille adored him, and despite my urge to scoff, I held my tongue. I even offered my congratulations when she announced the engagement during Christmas dinner, right as I was sharing news of a promotion I'd earned. She cut me off mid-sentence. "Sorry, Elias, this is too big to wait," she gushed, waving her sparkling ring. My mother gasped, my father welled up, and my news vanished into thin air. That night, I went home with a tight chest and a forced smile still etched on my face. I thought maybe they'd include me in planning the engagement party, or at least invite me to it. Weeks passed without a word, no calls, no texts, no invitations. I assumed they were just disorganized. Then I stumbled across the photos on social media. My sister glowing in a rented garden venue, champagne in hand, surrounded by family. My family. My parents, my cousins, even Aunt Celine, who lives hours away and always claims she's too exhausted for gatherings. Everyone was there except me. I waited a full day before calling my mother, needing time to cool off to keep my voice steady. She answered brightly, as if mid-laugh. "Elias, is everything all right?" "I saw the pictures," I said, my voice flat, a pause. "Oh," she said, her tone shifting slightly sharper. "You didn't invite me." Another pause, longer this time. "Well, we didn't think you'd want to be there. You've always had this thing about Camille. It's her moment, Elias. We didn't want any tension." My ears buzzed. "Tension? When have I ever caused a scene?" "You know what I mean," she replied almost breezily. "You tend to brood at these events. You don't like being overshadowed. Camille deserved a drama-free celebration." I couldn't speak. My own mother thought I'd sabotage my sister's joy just by being present. So I said the only thing I could manage without breaking. "Then you won't mind missing my wedding, too?" A long silence followed. Then she let out a short, awkward laugh like she didn't know how to respond. "Elias, don't be absurd." "I'm not," I said, calm but firm. "Enjoy your evening." I hung up, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the overlooked sibling. I felt rage and clarity. I'd been quietly dating someone for nearly 2 years. Mariah, a woman who's sharp, compassionate, and the only person who ever made me feel truly seen. We'd discussed marriage, and I'd been planning a quiet proposal, no fanfare. But that call changed something in me. A month later, I proposed. Mariah said yes, and I began planning something I never imagined, a wedding without my family. We kept it off social media, sent no announcements. I called Aunt Celine privately, shared the whole story, and she embraced me with her words. "You're right to do this, Eli," she said. "You deserve to be celebrated, not sidelined." She helped us choose a venue, a charming, understated manor house just outside the city. Mariah's family dove in with enthusiasm, helping with flowers, the cake, invitations. I'd never felt so supported. We mailed elegant, handwritten invitations with simple RSVP cards, but none went to my parents or Camille. I didn't block them or post anything online. I just let the silence sit, the way they'd let it sit with me. 3 weeks later, my cousin Lily texted me a photo of my wedding invitation on Aunt Celine's counter. The caption, "Your mom saw this. She's not handling it well." Then my phone started ringing. My mother, my father, Camille. I let every call go to voicemail. At 11:07 p.m., a text from my mom, "Elias, please." "We didn't mean it like that." I stared at the screen, my pulse racing, not from guilt, but from a strange sense of resolve. They were only reaching out because they'd been left out for once. They had no clue what was coming. The next morning, I woke to 5 more missed calls and 2 voicemails from my mom. One was frantic, her voice breaking, "Please call me." The other was softer, almost pleading, "We're your family, Elias. This isn't fair." That word, fair, lodged in my mind as I got ready for the day, as I sipped coffee from the mug Mariah gave me, engraved with future groom in elegant script. Fair. As if I hadn't spent years swallowing my pride while they fawned over Camille like she was their only child. As if I hadn't grinned through every slight, every ignored milestone, every moment they treated like it didn't matter unless Camille was the star. Fair, no, this was the first time I'd chosen myself over their narrative. By afternoon, the family group chat I'd muted long ago exploded with messages. I glimpsed the previews. Did anyone else get this? Elias is getting married? Celine, did you know? One message from Camille stood out. This is low, Eli, you're being childish. Childish, right. I typed a response, deleted it, then typed again before sending. I'm just honoring the boundaries you all established. You made it clear where I fit in this family. I'm not angry, just done pretending it doesn't sting. I muted the chat again. I didn't need their validation. I wasn't doing this to prove a point. I was doing it to start fresh, free from the weight of old wounds. But my family wasn't about to let it go. A few days later, Mariah and I were meeting with the florist when my father showed up unannounced, striding into the shop like he belonged there. He looked exhausted, his face lined with sleeplessness, but his jaw was set in that familiar way that screamed, "You've let me down." "Can we talk?" he asked. Mariah glanced at me, uncertain. "It's fine," I told her. "Give us a moment." She stepped outside, and my dad sat across from me, hands clasped tightly. "This has gone too far, Elias." "Has it?" I replied, voice steady. "You've made your point, you're hurt, I get it. But cutting your mother out of her only son's wedding, that's too much." I blinked. Only son, first time he'd called me that in years. "You all left me out of Camille's engagement," I said. "Didn't even tell me it was happening." "That's different," he mumbled. "Camille needed what?" I cut in, sharper than I meant. "A flawless day, and you thought my presence would ruin it." He looked away. I pressed on. "You made me feel like I'd poison my own sister's happiness just by being there. You never once considered how that felt." He sighed. "We didn't think it would matter that much to you. You've always been so self-sufficient." "That's code for we thought you'd stay quiet," I said. "And I always did." He didn't respond. I could see he was grappling, not because he lacked excuses, but because this was the first time he'd been forced to hear me. "We didn't mean to hurt you," he said finally, softer. "We just thought you didn't care." I stood. "That's the issue, you never bothered to ask." He looked up. "Can we at least come to the wedding?" I hesitated. For a moment I wanted to say yes, to believe he meant it. But then I remembered every year I'd spent watching them celebrate Camille while ignoring me. Every birthday, every milestone, every call I had to initiate. I took a breath. "I think this time you need to know what it's like to be excluded." He didn't argue, he just nodded and left. That evening I told Mariah everything. She listened quietly, then wrapped her arms around me. "You're not wrong," she whispered, and I believed her. But the story didn't end there. A week later, a photo of my wedding invitation surfaced online, shared by a cousin on social media. Suddenly, my private engagement was public. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years started texting, some with congratulations, others calling me heartless, selfish, ungrateful. Then Camille posted on her Instagram story a long rant over a black background. Some people would rather destroy family ties than admit their own flaws. It's heartbreaking when your own brother shuts out his family from his wedding just to make a point. I stared at it, then saved a screenshot. The next morning, I posted a photo of Mariah and me, smiling in sunlight, hands clasped in front of our venue. No caption, just the date. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't need to. The next message wasn't from Camille. It was my mom, a single line, "Please don't do this, Elias, let us come." I stared at it for a long time, then something unexpected happened, something that shifted everything. Something that made me realize this wasn't just about a wedding anymore. It was about reclaiming a part of myself I'd lost years ago. And it began with a knock at my door. It was a quiet Saturday morning, the kind where sunlight spills softly into the room and the world feels hushed. Mariah was out for a final dress fitting, and I was alone, sipping coffee in sweats, reviewing the guest list. The knock was tentative, almost reluctant. I opened the door and froze. Camille. She looked the same, polished, like she'd stepped out of a magazine, but her eyes held something new. Vulnerability, maybe, regret even. We stood in silence before she spoke. "Can I come in?" I didn't answer, just stepped aside. She hovered near the couch, unsure, her hands fidgeting. "Nice place," she said, then winced. "I mean, it's great. You always had an eye for this stuff." I leaned against the wall, waiting. She turned to me, taking a shaky breath. "I know you're upset, I get why, but I swear I didn't know Mom left you out of the engagement party." I crossed my arms. You didn't notice I wasn't there, her face tightened. I thought you were just busy, or doing your usual thing, staying above it all. I almost laughed, bitter. Above it all, like I was too good for every event I was quietly excluded from. She flinched. That's not fair, Elias. Isn't it? I said. You interrupted my promotion announcement at Christmas. You've taken over every holiday, every milestone, and I never said a word. Until now. She looked at her feet, biting her lip like she used to when we were kids, caught in a lie. I didn't mean to make everything about me, she said softly. That's just how Mom and Dad are. They always pushed me to shine. I got used to it. That doesn't make it right, I said. They taught you I was expendable and you never questioned it. The room went quiet, save for the hum of the fridge and the faint tap of her heels on the floor. She looked up, eyes glistening. Why didn't you tell me about the wedding? Her voice wasn't accusing, just raw, confused. I wanted peace, I said. One moment in my life that wasn't weighed down by expectations or slights or feeling like I didn't belong. I wanted a fresh start. She nodded, tears brimming. You could have told me, just me. I shook my head. I didn't trust you. That stung her. I saw it, and maybe I wanted it to, just a little. I'm not asking for Mom or Dad, she said. I'm not even asking you to forgive me now, but can I be there, just me? It was the first time I'd heard her speak without that center stage confidence. Just Camille, my sister, asking for something without assuming it was hers. I didn't answer right away. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at it and felt my stomach lurch. A Facebook notification, a public post from my mom. When your only son chooses to cut his family out of his happiest day, you wonder where you failed. We loved him, raised him, and now he wants to erase us. I hope he reconsiders before it's too late. I showed it to Camille. Her eyes widened. She posted this today? I nodded. The moment broke. Camille's expression shifted, exhausted, angry, but not at me. She promised she'd stay out of it, she muttered. She said she'd let me handle this. I couldn't believe it. Not because my mom had pulled something manipulative, but because it was suddenly clear this wasn't about me anymore. It was about control, about appearances, about my parents needing to own the story. Camille sank onto the couch, head in her hands. She's not even upset about missing the wedding. She's upset she can't play the proud mom. I didn't respond. She was right. She looked up, voice hoarse. What do you want to do? I picked up my phone, staring at the post. Over 100 likes, comments from distant relatives taking sides. I don't know yet, I said. But I did know one thing. I wasn't going to let them control the narrative, not this time. As Camille sat there looking smaller than I'd ever seen her, a new plan began to form. One they'd never anticipate. One they couldn't twist. And it started with a list, the guest list to be exact, that I was about to revise. Camille sat hunched, rubbing her temples like the weight of the world was pressing down. The Facebook post still glowed on my phone, a public jab that stung more than I'd expected. She made it about her, I said. Turned my choice into her tragedy so she could play the victim. Camille didn't argue. She told me she'd let me fix this, she said, shaking her head. She doesn't care what I say. That's the thing, I replied. She never has. It wasn't entirely true, but it felt like it. My chest tightened with a mix of validation and grief. This was exactly what I'd anticipated, but it still hurt. I sat across from her, and the idea I'd been mulling over solidified into something concrete, something daring. I'm changing the guest list, I said. She looked up, surprised. To what? I held her gaze, weighing my words. You can come. Aunt Selen and Lily too, that's it. Her eyes widened. You're serious. You're the only one who showed up in person, I said. The only one who owned up to any of this. You don't deserve to be punished for their mistakes. She nodded, voice barely audible. Thank you, she whispered. But, I added, raising a hand, this doesn't mean everything's fixed. This isn't a big reconciliation. It's a small step. I understand, she said, standing, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you years ago. I didn't respond, just gave a single nod. She left. That night, I showed Mariah the post. She read it carefully, then met my eyes. Do you want to respond? I do, I said, but not online, in person, on our terms. Her brow creased. What's the plan? I smiled, a spark of defiance igniting. I want our wedding to be about us, not them. If they're going to paint me as the bad guy for choosing myself, maybe I'll lean into it just this once. Mariah grinned. Then let's make this wedding unforgettable. The wedding day arrived with a quiet, electric serenity. The sky was a brilliant blue, the air warm and light. We'd chosen an outdoor ceremony under the sprawling trees of the manor's garden. Flowers lined the paths, soft music floated through the air, and guests arrived with warm smiles and quiet excitement. People who truly knew us, who valued us. Aunt Selin arrived first, tears in her eyes as she pulled me into a hug. "Your parents are spiraling," she whispered with a sly grin. "Camille said your mom threw her phone this morning. Maybe now she gets it," I said with a small shrug. Camille arrived next, understated in a simple dress, no trace of her usual flair. She hugged Mariah warmly and sat quietly with Celine and Lily, watching with an expression I couldn't quite place, pride, maybe, or regret. The ceremony was brief but breathtaking. When Mariah walked down the aisle, every old wound faded into something soft and fleeting. She was luminous. We exchanged vows under the leafy canopy, kissed to cheers from our loved ones, and walked back down the aisle hand in hand. We didn't need a spectacle, we just needed each other. At the reception, guests laughed, danced, and raised glasses in heartfelt toasts. I considered a speech, something subtle to address the family who'd sidelined me. But I let it go. I focused on the joy around me. For once, I wasn't in the background. I was living my story. Then, during dessert, a waiter approached with a small envelope. "This was left at the gate," he said. "They said it's urgent." I opened it, frowning. Inside was a handwritten note in my mother's script. "Elias, we saw the photos. We saw your post. We know we've hurt you more than we ever understood. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know you were never unloved. We were just too blind, too caught up to show you the love you deserved. I messed up. A lot. But today, seeing what you've created, I've never been prouder. I hope someday you'll let us try again." Mom, my hands shook as I held the paper. Mariah came over, concern in her eyes. "You okay?" I handed her the note. She read it, then looked at me. "What do you want to do?" I gazed out at the garden, the laughter, the golden light of dusk settling like a quiet promise. The note didn't erase years of neglect or the sting of being overlooked. But it was something, a flawed, late human something. "I don't know yet," I said, "but I know one thing." "What's that?" I took her hand, smiling. "This is the happiest day of my life, and nothing's going to take that away." A month later, we were back from our honeymoon, flipping through wedding photos when the doorbell rang. Mariah answered, and I heard her speaking softly before footsteps approached. My mom stood in the hallway, no makeup, no polished look, just jeans and a sweater, eyes red. She didn't speak, just held out a small wooden box. I opened it. Inside were childhood photos I thought were long gone, birthdays, school awards, a clumsy Father's Day card I'd made at 7. She looked at me, voice trembling. "I found this in the attic. I thought you'd gotten rid of it." "But I couldn't." I didn't speak. I just nodded and took the box. It would take time, maybe years, maybe more, but for the first time the spotlight didn't matter. I wasn't the extra anymore. I was the lead.